This is Merchandise Mart. Transfer to Brown Line trains at Merchandise Mart. Doors closing.
So welcome to the Wyzendale Weekly Wrap-Up, where we talk about architecture, design, and everything in between. We got a mover and shaker this week, so go ahead, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Katherine Darnstadt. I'm the founder of Latent Design. We're an architecture and urban design firm in Chicago. And in the spare time that I should be sleeping, relaxing, or doing something productive like a hobby, I also am the founder of Boombox Chicago. So that's a prefab and modular pop-up retail space company in Chicago. And then also the co-founder of Design Trust Chicago, which is a nonprofit focused on equity in the built environment through projects, policies, and programs.
For sure, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot. Well, before we cover all that, the first time I've been following you for a long time, so mad props to everything that you've been doing. Yeah, and then I think it was like 2015, 2014, I saw you speak actually in the Merchandise Mart. At Braintree for Creative Mornings.
Okay. Creative Mornings.
You were like racking your brain. You're like, where was it?
I remember that because they have like the cool cloud fixtures and that they have an awesome space.
Yeah. Awesome space. So I mean, I just feel like you're constantly with some of the stuff that you're doing as well, other podcasts and stuff. You're just constantly on. That's how has that changed since you first started 10 years ago?
I think there's some things that I would have wished I had the courage to do earlier or knew that they were the right route.
Yeah.
Where it seems like I'm doing a lot of different things. You have design, you have construction, you have a nonprofit, but it's all showing that they're all going towards the same goal. As if we have a very simple mission of social equity in the built environment. We use our tool of design. What does that look like?
Right.
And so that's where everything's kind of funneling towards. And the only way to do that is we know we have design, construction, policy, nonprofits that influence that.
Yeah.
I wish I did that earlier or figured out how to, create a firm that could do that earlier and pursue that. Because when I started the firm, we're 11 years, this year.
Congrats, huge.
Thank you.
Huge.
To make it that far.
Yeah. In your MBE, WBE
all
as
of
well
those
for
things.
the city.
Yeah.
We're waiting on our MBE registration, right? Certification right now.
Yeah.
And just that whole process was huge undertaking. So.
Right. And I think there were a couple, there were mistakes of just being naive and young of starting a firm. So, in the design field that the natural trajectory of starting your own business is you have to run somebody else's business first.
Right.
Because that's how we gain experience. That's how, that's how we understand the projects, and that's how we make the network that we want to, steal and start our own firm with, right? And that's just how the process works.
Yeah.
And that's also an area why our field tacks a little bit older too, because projects take a long time, and it's also a little bit whiter, because it also is who's in the design field and what pathways to people in the design field. So I started the firm because of the last kind of like global meltdown, which was a recession. I was laid off from the firm I was working at, but I just got licensed. So to your point, you're studying for your licensing exam. That's a huge professional milestone, and then all of a sudden you don't have a profession to practice in. All of a sudden, like crap, I made it this far, and now I'm totally in the ocean.
Yeah.
It really sucks. And Latent Design was really this. It was a stopgap. It was totally plan B. I was like, I'm licensed. I was pregnant with my son. No one's hiring.
Yeah.
So I'm just, I'm an architect now. Like I could hustle some projects. Like I could get that. I'll figure this out. And then next year I'll be hired by somebody because I'm great. And, I'll make somebody else's firm great. I'll continue to learn and I'll keep moving forward. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Didn't even come close to happening. And, so for the first 2 years of the firm, I was still actively applying to other firms, going on interviews, but working on projects, which would be thought of on the side.
Yeah.
And that eventually there was this flip where all of a sudden, both from a project standpoint and then kind of my own mentality of, oh my gosh, I could run my own firm. These could be the projects that I work on. And then I don't have to answer to anyone else.
For sure.
And I was like, okay, I've been doing this for 2 years. I mean, I've been making it by. I haven't been making a lot, but I've been making it by. Like, I could make a commitment to 1 more year.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's how it went. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're at 10 years. We're at 11 years.
Blink of an eye.
Yeah. And then, oh, we're hiring people. We're doing this. We're moving into an office.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's still an every year negotiation, like to myself, like, am I still doing this? Mm-hmm. And are we hitting the goals? Are we meeting the metrics? How far away maybe have we strayed from the mission of equity in the built environment? How much closer are we getting, and where do we have to pivot? And so that's where all those transitions have happened, of why it has to be 3 different things to get to that one goal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've grown and learned so much within the past. Yeah. It's still rapidly growing, right? Mm-hmm. For those of you, we're going to kind of, I don't want to say skip, but check out the Design Lab podcast with Katherine. Mm-hmm. She covers a lot of what she did, what she's doing, what you're doing. So that was an awesome podcast.
With Bonku.
Yeah, yes. With Bonku. Yeah, mm-hmm. I just didn't want you to feel like you had to constantly repeat it. We'll put it in the link so everybody can check it out.
Okay, cool.
Because I like what we're talking about the firm, right? Mm-hmm. And how you're saying how you've grown. And I guess, you're saying those pillars, which pillar do you think outweighs the other? I mean, I know they're all important to it, but to me, when I hear them, like the policy, I think is one of the huge things that really is a catalyst to some of these developments. So.
Absolutely. And I didn't know. I mean, this is also being very naive. Like, you don't really know how much policy does influence your projects and the built environment until you start working on them. Yeah. And so that's where I think partnerships with City Open or even Design Trust is like, where's that advocacy for better design in the built environment? Where does that exist? Because I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not even a big enough firm to like pay a lobbyist or do real political donations to have some, weight in a decision-making process. So where does that exist? And that's why I think the policy, to your point, it's an important pillar which informs design, which allows design to actually thrive. Right. And so it's surprising to understand that it's not necessarily your design acumen that always thrives in terms of the creation of a project. It's like sometimes pure political will. Yeah. And that's where, maybe our power structure has shifted a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. It's just so much to untangle, right? Mm-hmm. So much to talk about on that. So your firm's growing. How many people do you have now? We're 5 now. Okay, cool. So we're still boutique in that sense. Yeah. I think that's getting to where we want to be. The joke that I have is, so I have a little storefront office in Westtown on Ashland Avenue. Nice. And when we actually received some furniture from Technion during the Neocon flips, they donated their whole showroom to a couple of our nonprofit clients. Gotcha. And we were able to fit out their spaces. But contract furnishings are large. Yeah. They have large dimensions, in smaller spaces. So there ended up being this 6-person beautiful workstation, workstation island that was left over that nobody could fit. And I just was like, well, I have an office, and that's the only thing that fits in the office. Right. So my goal was, when it was just 2 of us, when I got that piece, it's like, I want to be big enough that we could have 6 people at this station, because that's those are all the chairs that I have. That's funny. 1 chair broke, so that's why we have 5. Yeah, and I would like to take the moment to give a shout out to Kelsey and JSI for hosting us today in the beautiful showroom here at the Merchandise Mart. It's gorgeous, yeah, and stay tuned after. Kelsey's going to talk a little bit about the products that you see and seen if you're watching us via video. So shout out to Louisa as well. I know she's a recent team member of yours. Yeah, she is. Her and Hope actually helps a lot with what we're doing with Wyzendale and on the Instagram too. So you guys are doing great things. So and we have great people too. Yeah. And I think that was part of the growth strategy of a firm. Like, when you're first starting and you hustle yourself, you do 5 different things, and you're knowledgeable, and you realize you could run a whole project yourself sometimes. But as it grows, you really see, like, where are knowledge gaps? Where do I need to spend my time? Where do I need to grow somebody else? And how do I build my team? And I think I have a team that I could continue to build now, in a way that helps grow our projects, helps grow our design, challenges us from a design standpoint, And that's a business skill in and of itself is building a team.
Definitely. And you mentioned on the other podcast about your mentors. How many mentors would you say that you have, or just like peers that you reach out to? Because I always think that's important for people, regardless of their, position, to have the mentors.
Yeah, I think there's different levels of mentors, right? That I think about. There's peer mentors who are here's the tier of maybe 5 firms or firm founders that I talk to on a pretty regular basis, who we're growing at the same time. We have the same challenges. So it's like we're our own working cohort of how do you deal with everything from like a question from fire prevention on a permit. How would you tackle this to, what healthcare plan are you using, right? So I think that's very beneficial to have that openness in an incredibly competitive environment that we work in. Then I also think about the mentors who are more experienced, who I come with, here's the existential life or work or professional question. And then help me start to think about now things, okay, I've been around for a decade. How do I even think about the next decade? Because that was a time frame that I truly didn't mentally understand in terms of business.
Yeah. It's for us, I know we're in that hustle mode right now where we're just hustling like every day we're working, and we try to keep it to the 9 to 6 time frame. But I mean, I sent out a proposal last night at like 11 o'clock to the team internally, just so that we could figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I know that. And the remote, tell me about this in terms of any of your challenges with the remote work environment. We've had conversations internally with the team. I was like, just because I respond at 11 o'clock at night on Slack or send you something, and if you're up, don't feel obligated to respond. That is just where I am in my schedule. Let's try and keep it as tight to this, normal hours as humanly possible.
Definitely.
And like even more open levels of communication, because I feel, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I can't physically ever go to the amount of meetings that I have on my calendar now for virtual meetings.
No, definitely not.
Never.
But your input directly results your output, which is the challenge, right? Like to me, that's so challenging, because sure, I would like to shut it down at 7 o'clock and have dinner and watch TV, but we had to get the proposal out. I mean, that's potential project work that we said we would get out, and we want to keep to that, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's the challenge and I think in our industry, or just being in the service industry in general, right? Like you definitely your output is what you put in. So
and I think also that kind of the ability to think on a longer timeline is helpful. That took a long time for me to figure out, because I might be super busy right now and this proposal is for something in September, and you have this desire to be like, God, I'm so too busy. I'm going to deprioritize it. I'll get it. I'll work on it last minute or something like that. And then comes September when you have no work. You're like, shit, I should have spent more time on that proposal, shouldn't I have?
Exactly. Well, congrats on the Invest Southwest.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So do you want overview of Invest Southwest, or just the project? I have a little bit of everything.
Let's do the project first, and then we'll talk about that whole Southwest, because a lot of the people, the millions of listeners we have, is
all over the world.
All over the world. I think it's more interesting for the architecture and design kind of perspective and how that went.
Yeah. So the project itself is based in Austin on the west side of the city. So it's at the corner of Chicago and Laramie, and there's this beautiful Egyptian-inspired terracotta-clad bank building that's just an enormous, beautiful presence on the corner, and it's the Laramie State Bank.
Okay.
And that bank building plus the adjacent parcel of land was part of a development, a site for development proposals for development teams to submit to the city.
Okay.
And so our team was selected.
How big was the lot? Sorry.
I should know this by heart now.
I never know that. I'm like, should I dive in just a little bit deeper?
I can tell you what we're building on it, but I don't know how big the lot is in square feet. That's okay. But the Laramie State Bank is a 3-story structure. It's like this gorgeous 1920s style building. So big volumes, large presence, that we're going to restore. It's been vacant for many years. It has water damage, like most vacant older buildings. It needs a lot of love, but it has so much significance. We're going to return it back into a bank again.
Very nice.
So our development team spent time building partnerships with potential bank operators to go into the space. We're going to bring local businesses. So we have a local cafe owner that would open up her second location in there. Bringing a blues museum, so working with an operator that's been doing museum pop-ups kind of throughout the city, and having the blues museum located there, and then co-working and other incubator spaces to tie in with some of the economic development programs that are going on the corridor. So how do you make space to scaffold up businesses so that they start up and go through a program one place, grow their business in an incubator, and then hopefully move to a storefront later on down the block. So you kind of create that cycle. The cool thing about this is it's going to be a community-run, community-led building. So that building and the kind of the organizational structure of that building is so that it's owned, operated, and any profits generated go back to the community.
Great.
So it's its own community benefits agreement that conceptually we want to happen within that bank building. The adjacent lot. Our partner is Heartland Housing on that one.
Yeah. Shout out Heartland Alliance too.
Yeah, and Heartland Alliance,
definitely.
both of them.
Yeah.
And so they are great to work with, but that's going to be about a 70-unit affordable housing complex. So with 1 to 3 units, it has a beautiful kind of the two buildings together make a U. In plan, so that there's a central courtyard that faces the street.
Nice.
And that will bridge kind of the ground floor activities between the bank and the residential building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And we want to bridge old and new together.
So how long was that proposal? but before that, I mean, there's just so much. I mean, I feel like we're going to already need a part 2 because you're talking about like the cycle, right? And then now as a business owner, you're thinking, okay, well, some of these people could actually go into Boombox and use Boombox, like something like I've set up and I want people to do, and then eventually go into this. I mean, do all of those things run through your mind? Or how do you know which one to like attack and present at the right time?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think part of the strength of our team actually being selected was because even for something as small as Boombox, which we have a Boombox on the western end of that corridor, and the bank building anchors the eastern end of what will be called the Seoul City corridor.
Yeah.
So there's a corridor plan and development plan associated with that.
The Seoul City corridor?
Seoul City corridor.
Does that have any with Seoul City Church?
No, not with Seoul City Church.
Okay, I was going to say.
2 different things.
Yeah.
Not related.
Go on.
Don't worry.
I was going to say, wow.
Yeah. And so with that so we've already seen the benefits of kind of that system. So we have Boombox vendors that have already moved into storefronts of renovated buildings on the Chicago Avenue corridor. We're actually currently working on one of our first Boombox vendors is opening up the first Black-owned produce market and grocery store in Austin. We're working on that building for 40 acres, fresh market. And then, further east in Humboldt Park, we're working on other projects. So Chicago Avenue kind of became the spine. And because we were started with one project, we could start to see those connections and try and wrap them into other proposals, other conversations to make a ecosystem, right? And that's, I think, part of being embedded also in a neighborhood through your projects, right? You're on meetings, you hear things, and designers are so good at just synthesizing large amounts of information to all of a sudden like, hey, we can make these connection points, or we could use our space to suggest those connection points.
Just pause. I mean, that's awesome. That is awesome. I wish we had the mimosas going. I would cheers you right now. Like that's fantastic.
Cheers to my caffeine addiction.
We got 2 for you on deck.
I know.
So back to the proposal. So did that effort took a tremendous effort, right?
Yeah, and I think this is a great kind of like both small firm boutique firm observation of time that goes into bigger proposals, right? Because it's a competitive element, right?
Yeah.
Like competitive proposals when you're just responding to an RFQ is one amount of time. The RFPs are another, and then when you're really at this development scale, I mean that was 3 months of on our end, we had one full-time person on it, plus my time, and plus we have all our other design partners. So we're partnered with Valerio DeWalt Train and Associates. We're a paired design excellence firm selected by the city, and then that was our design team for this. And they had their design staff on it on top. Plus it's all Heartlands, they're running the numbers, looking at the designs, putting the book together. And then the city threw in this loop of everyone has to make an 8-minute video. So then we had to become videographers last minute. It was a lot. It was a lot. And we were on.
That's a lot.
And our firm was on 3 teams for the first round. So we had a full proposal for two teams in Inglewood. And then after that, we're like, we took a break.
Yeah.
We have one more large development proposal coming forward. We're shortlisted for the C40 site in the Loop on Lake and Van Buren, but over the past 6 months, that's been somebody's job.
Yeah.
And that's something when you see at larger firms, they can absorb that because that's the cost of the pursuits, right? And so our cost of the pursuit is I spend my time on Saturday looking at, working on something, but it's that was a very different scale. And that was hard to navigate. It took very serious consideration and think of what's the over under on us actually winning this.
Yeah.
And saying no to some teams where you look at it and you're like, are you actually going to win? And looking at what they're already presenting and saying, maybe we can't attach ourselves to this. We want to go with a team that we think will be really successful. Yeah. And that's a risk too. It's a risk to say no to something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all those calculations. I mean, again, without having this conversation or I think that transparency, I know we talked about it on the Mercadito call, that transparency and effort that I don't think really people will understand if they're not in the industry. But even when you are in the industry, that's a tremendous amount of calculation and decision making that you have to make just to go into that. And how taxing is that? So I'm glad you did take a vacation recently.
Yes.
Relax. Hopefully did not think of anything.
No, I didn't.
Do you still sketch or anything like that? Or
we do. So sketch, still very analog on some things. My Morpholio trace, I'm taking the course, taking the little training courses. So I get more proficient at it. Which is great. So I think that's so integral to navigating ideas. I think the other thing that's interesting with our office, so if I work from home, I'm on a Mac, which doesn't Bluebeam isn't supported anymore, so I can't mark up drawings that way. So I still have to mark everything up by hand. Right, which I like, which actually I think helps with some of the design discussions internally. Here's the intent versus relying on a box or a copy paste in a different way. So our team's really good at collaborating. I think it's been this. I don't know if you have this challenge in Wyzendale. Is just sometimes I feel our employees, they get scared of sketching. So so of sending something back, they always make a more formal markup or type something out, make a quick text. And I was like, no, just you could sketch it to me and drop it in the Slack thread, or email it to me or sketch over it. My design is not the final one. So just you need to sketch this. You need to learn how to do this. Or I challenged, I was like, okay, here's our building footprint. Here's the initial layout that I'm thinking. Here's the rough sizes. Give me a couple versions of this. And it's a little bit of paralysis because it's a big task sometimes too.
Yeah. And we've worked with a couple of structural engineers on projects and they're just sketching all the time. Yeah. They'll submit the sketch. They'll send you a sketch and it's like, okay. But I'm saying just to communicate the design intent.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And it just saves so much time. And even when you're talking about decisions, even how do I transfer these red lines from this drawings from a sketch over to the team, right? Is it just a photo? Do I have a huge scanner? Do I have a plotter?
Yeah.
All of those are questions that I think firms and small teams really have to decide because we don't have the resources of a large firm to do that. And when you go through the Invest Southwest firms, the teams, some of them are single people and then some of them are the larger behemoth companies. The first one that comes to my mind is a Perkins and Will.
Right, we worked with them at Inglewood. Yeah.
So how, I guess, do you think that the Invest Southwest hits the mark on that, or I guess what's the strategy as far as obviously they have different strengths and resources than a small boutique has, but how does it? Because for me, it just looks like someone's on community engagement and the other people are just on production.
Right. That's a good question, and I think that's part of the feedback that we definitely gave back to DPD on this, because we're part of the guinea pigs. We were all submitted during the first round. You learn a lot from actually prototyping that, and then it can make changes for current round 2, 3, and the other ones, because they're going to release 9 of these. This is going to keep going on for the next couple years.
Yeah.
So part of that feedback is
can I cut you off really quick? So will there be opportunity for new teams to submit?
For the Invest Southwest?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to continue to launch more sites.
Right, I know, but will the short list be able to be added or subtracted?
From the design excellence?
Correct.
That's 2 different questions.
Right.
So, so design excellence will, I think, open up in 3 years.
Gotcha.
So then there'll be new firms, and there's, issues with both of them.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong on that. There's confusion first.
Yeah.
On do Invest Southwest teams and developer applications and team applications, do they only use design excellence shortlist partners, or can they use anyone? The answer is anyone, but it's definitely not conveyed that way.
Right.
On the first glance. So there's a kind of a clarity in how that's conveyed that needs to go forward. Understanding of where, because there was a concern that the city's seeing the same teams on the same projects, same suspects, right? Not anyone new. And, they're like, where are the small firms? And we have to educate them and say, this is a lot of friggin' work. A firm of 5 doesn't have people to pull this together and doesn't have the resources and doesn't have the budget to pursue that type of pursuit. So that's why you do. There's also experience levels of being, once you do a project of this scale, you could think through it differently, right? Okay, if I got challenged with the same site again, I would go through the process a little bit differently, maybe push in this part a little bit more, maybe spend less time here, more time here, because you understand, you see what's a successful proposal, how much time was spent, and where time wasn't spent, and it didn't matter, was spent, but it didn't matter.
Right.
And I think those are important, right?
Yeah.
So I think if we want to grow in the design community, it's an understanding of the difference between experienced and emerging firms in terms of true years of talent, but then also that there are differences between large and small firms that don't necessarily impact the design. They impact some of these essential free sprints of work that are being requested. Right? And then you can't achieve design excellence in a proposal, right? If your developer isn't paying you, right? There's costs to the design. So we were fortunate all of our teams paid us. It was small, but they did. But I mean, you're putting together a proposal for free for 3 months. That's a different, I can't do that. Perkins and Will can. I cannot, and and then the time. Even this week, somebody reached out for the Bronzeville site, which closes in 2 weeks, and asked if we would help them design the project. I said, there's no way that we could design a successful winning proposal in 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
I said, we spent 3 solid months working on Austin. Because people reach out. They saw the announcement on Monday. Somebody reaches out on Tuesday. Is help with our Bronzeville proposal. I'm it's due in 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Right.
You're way behind the ball on this one. I'm sorry. You're not going to win.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I mean that's a. This is a boatload of undertaking, right?
Yeah.
And it's. We were talking about the Southwest. Shit. Sorry, I was just thinking. The effort and how do you combat that? So do you see, that's what I was going to ask, sorry. Do you see developers or more the construction side, design build is always an option that's thrown out there where the construction companies are, taking this sort of in-house services in-house. Do you think that's, it's not new, people have tried it, but do you think, because COVID has really changed the game as far as how everybody has been operating, right? And do you think that that's going to continue as far as bringing everything in-house?
I think, that's one of the things that if I, when I give advice, I would have pursued design design-led design build, not contractor-led design build, right?
Of course.
So there's different motivations. I would have pursued that earlier, and gotten through some of these small projects that we're going through now in that delivery method earlier, so we could pursue larger ones. Building teams around that. So there's a couple of contractors that we work with that we want to be able to build that kind of skill set to be a larger DB team in particular kind of areas of commercial hospitality. And I always have a love for small projects, so that's kind of an area where we want to be, as probably on the design build side.
Yeah.
I think the other piece that comes with it is, municipalities love it as a delivery method, right? One point of contact, you take all the risk, great. We can push you around, and it's a very, very risky project.
Yeah.
It's a very risky delivery method, but the benefits of it of seeing and dynamically designing and pricing, I see could be a benefit. But you have to on the design side make kind of non-negotiable priorities.
Yeah.
That can't be value engineered out. We're working on a project with the city right now where we're in the feasibility stage, and they already did a cost estimate. I was like, you can't do a cost estimate on an idea. It's just a thought. It's just a thought.
It's a sketch.
It's all it is. You're totally mind policing me here. And then you're mad at me because it's over budget, because I really don't know. I couldn't even tell you if this is even the right size right now. So I've never been through that before. Luckily, I had people on my team who and also some of our consultants, they're like, we've worked with them before. This is probably what it's going to be. And they were right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's something new to plan for, but I think that's the downfall.
Right.
Is using it as a panacea, and getting into minutia of design before there's agreement on the concepts. Right, and that's unnecessary.
Right.
I think that's very detrimental.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, so you took a vacation, reflected.
Yeah.
So what do the next 10 years look like for you?
Yeah, the next 10 years, I didn't reflect too much because that would have been work.
That's true. How long did it take you to really kind of disconnect? I'm sure you didn't fully ever disconnect,
no.
but was it a few days, 3 days, or how?
I think it was. It does take a full day to kind of undo it. I need my way. Different people relax differently and disconnect, right? Some people are more active. They go for a jog and they need that. I need kind of more hermetically sealed quiet to, quiet outside influences and quiet my own thoughts to then be able, okay, I'm recharged and let me kind of step back into this.
Yeah.
But I have been thinking about the next 10 years very strategically since last year, right? So this is the 11th year. Last year was the 10th year. And I spent a lot of time figuring out, first, are another 10 years possible, right? So is it possible? Because, I started the year optimistic and then a pandemic hit. So that changes your level of optimism pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so looking at, are another 10 years possible? It doesn't need to be through latent design, right? Because if I think about there's the influence of the firm in the field, then there's the influence of myself, and then setting up our team for success other places too, right? So is it latent design? Do we try and could we get bought and go start a studio within another firm, right? What would that look like if we had the resources of the bigger firms, right? We have the ambition, but we definitely don't have the resources. So what would that look like with a different level of support? Is it even architecture anymore? So what would it look like if you're working in an architecture adjacent field? So that was an interesting kind of realm of conversations of, going to a design strategy firm or going to an urban innovation startup and figuring out what that even means. All these different ways. Or is is it nice to could I just take a year sabbatical and go find a fellowship and just do that and then figure it out later.
Yeah. Now that's a real break for sure.
That's a real break for sure. And all of those opportunities kind of pursued in parallel. I think ultimately one of my mentors, so to tie it back to this mentor conversation, I was exploring the idea and I laid it all out and they're like, well, it seems like you have 3 different things that you're pursuing, maybe 4. They're like, have you ever just done one thing and just focused on your firm and that's the only thing? Because I was teaching for 10 years, all these things. I was like, wow, that's pretty, no. The answer is no. I've never done that. I've never just done that. So what if give yourself a year of just doing that. And so that's how I started 2020 of like, I'm just going to focus on this one thing of my firm, and that's it. Then all the challenges came, right? Everything got thrown at you to try to figure out, and we grew.
Yeah.
And, and I think that showed that kind of dedicated focus to trying to kind of formalize some elements and refine them, tie up loose threads that might have been mistakes or issues that we were avoiding in terms of firm infrastructure, setting our design standards, and then hiring people in a way to think about a growth mindset of the firm rather than like a fulfilling this kind of immediate need, right? So who understanding how to hire for potential.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic.
Thank
you. Katherine. Thank you again for coming on. Where can people follow you and see the work?
Yeah. So we're latentdesign.net. So always that's our website.
Okay.
We're latent_design across all the social media. So if you want spicy hot takes, you could go to the Twitter.
I know.
If you want more, if you want like a proper PR post, you could go to Instagram.
I know. I was gonna ask you about the Twitter. The Twitter universe is just wild.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Well, Leighton, I love that Leighton interacts a lot and asks questions. I mean, I think someone was talking about the facade. I think last time I saw the facade of the Austin or the project.
Right, yeah.
And you're like, well, what do you mean? It refers back to it. So you're able to interact and comment quickly, right? So I think that's fantastic.
Against all better PR advice, I still control the Twitter account, so that's why.
Love it. Okay, so latent.design or latentdesign.net?
Correct, is the website. And then latent_design is the same for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Cool. Yeah. And then Boombox is?
Boomboxchicago.com.
And then Chicago Design Trust?
No, other way around. DesignTrustChicago.org.
DesignTrustChicago.org.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, look forward
space.
to catching up soon. So
absolutely.
Thank you. So thank you for checking out the podcast. We wanted to take a moment and tell you a little bit more about the products that you're seeing in Scene here. And to do that is someone more knowledgeable than myself. Go ahead, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Kelsey McLaughlin with SCR Group, and I'm the local rep for JSI Furniture.
Cool. And just a quick background on the rep group and the JSI. Can you give us that?
Yeah, so SCR Group is a multi-line independent manufacturers rep. So we have several different lines to offer our clients. But JSI is the showroom we're in now, and one of my favorite of our brands, if we don't tell anybody else.
Our millions of fans.
And they're a great company to work for. Really fun. Love what you do is their slogan, and they really try and bring that energy into their marketing and, of course, with the factory and kind of manufacturing and bringing that kind of joy into everything.
Nice. JSI?
JSI.
Perfect. Yes. And then talk to us about the furniture that we see here, the stools.
Yeah, so actually the stools, the modular seating, and this lounge chair are all part of the B-Space lounge collection and the coffee table as well. So JSI likes to do big collections. So it's rarely a chair. It's usually a much broader family, which is nice for cohesiveness. But yeah, B-Space is a really cool collection. It was actually designed by our local friends, Q Design.
Yeah,
so
big shout out to Q Design, all the dudes out there.
And it has a really beautiful, on the lounge chair, really beautiful molded ply shell. And what's cool about it is it has exposed ply edges. So you can see that down below on the platform base on the modular as well. You can see the layers of the ply and some of that materiality in an otherwise really polished collection.
Very cool. And this sofa is part of the collection. What was the name of the collection one more time?
B-Space.
B-Space, nice. And then the bench behind us?
Yeah, and then the bench in the background is our Oxley bench. Okay. So JSI actually has another like sister brand called Clem that deals with hospitality. And that bench started out as a hospitality spec that we decided had a lot of relevance in the commercial side. So we brought it over and kind of tweaked it. We're showing here the tufted version, which is a favorite because it's so dramatic and juicy and beautiful.
Nice, nice.
But we also have a plain bench and a quilt top bench, so you can kind of tailor it to the aesthetic you're going for.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you again for hosting us. Where can people, socials or website that they can find both?
Yeah, you can find JSI at JSI Furniture. I believe on Instagram it's at JSI Furniture. And my Instagram is Kelsey with SCR Group. And my name is spelled Kelcey.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks you again. Thank you again, Kelsey. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Really happy to have you.
Thank you.
Doors closing.